Guys, Mr. Happy here, and I just wanted to do this little intro to this video just because, I mean, the title would have been self-explanatory, but I really just wanted to do a quick intro to this video. So I was asked about something in my stream, and I was going over a few of my comments on YouTube, and I got really involved in this one conversation about, Final Fantasy 11 and Final Fantasy 14, and it was the video where I compared the two. If you go to the video, you can definitely see the comments under it, and it was more or less just, the point of the video was to show the differences between 11 and 14 at the time that the video had come out. Now, clearly there have been changes about that game since I made that video, and the person was trying to tell me I should make an updated video because of all the new great things in 11, like the Mog Garden, where you can get your own materials, how you can play with famous NPCs from the game, and you can level up with them and unlock stuff with them, how you can teleport around with all the new teleports in the area. They wanted me to make an updated video, but everything in that video was, for the most part, still relevant. And I just got into it, man. I don't know what it was, and it sparked this rant about MMOs and how they've evolved and where they're sort of going at this pace. And I really wanted to post the whole thing. I wanted to make a much more concise video about it, but I figured I'm just going to post this rant because it was so much fun and I got so into it that I definitely want to capture my raw emotion of getting into it right then, as opposed to doing a video where I have more concise and organized thoughts. I think it would make a nicer video in the end, but I'm just going to post this rant right after this video. So be sure to watch the rant and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also, I'm going to be streaming on December 16th. Any of you who play Final Fantasy 14, which, considering it's my channel, is probably most of you, I'm going to be streaming for most of the day, definitely waiting until patch 2.1 comes out. I'm not going to be streaming all 24 hours of the patch, but definitely come by the stream if you're bored. Probably going to be playing Final Fantasy 8 for like 5-6 hours probably, so definitely come by the stream and hang out on December 16th if you're watching this video before that comes out. If not, skip past this part and get to the rant. I'll definitely be sure to include when the rant starts in the description below. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rant. Take care. When you look back in like 2003 and before, and you have Final Fantasy 11, you have Ultima Online, you have some common really shitty MMOs like Silk Road Online and Hero Online. Those were really popular back then. The really like shitty ones. You had RuneScape, you had EverQuest. You had games like those, and those games were difficult. They were time consuming. They were very punishing. And they were successful for their time. And back then, those were the kind of games that people played. But as we ushered in a new age of greater technology and more accessibility to information, then the whole gaming industry has changed. And World of Warcraft had like 5 million subscribers when it came out. It already had a huge backing from Warcraft's 1 through 3. So it already had the lore background. It already had a cult following because of Diablo, because of StarCraft, because of Warcraft. They had plenty of fans to work off of. They made the game a lot more accessible. They had really easy questing. They had very straightforward leveling. They had great environments for the time. It was rich with lore. Everything felt like it had a purpose. They did so much right with the game. Unfortunately, what that did with the MMO industry is it prevented anything the same as it as ever getting the same success. They took MapleStory, that's another one. They took basically everything that was right. They took everything that was right about all the other MMOs before them and all the other single player RPGs and things like that, and they put them all in one game. And they made it accessible. So that was the thing. They made it accessible, but they made it hard at the same time. That was the thing. They did that right when it first came out. And then over the years, it became more accessible, but it still had hardcore content, so it was appealing to everybody. And a lot of other companies tried to mooch off of that success. They were like, well, if it worked for them, let's release a game. It has our lore, our universe. People will be bored of that universe and come back and come to ours because they're bored of that one. And unfortunately, the problem with doing that is people, they played WoW through its adolescence, and they supported it. They supported WoW's adolescence to let it evolve into the monolith that it eventually became, which it is now, which at 7.7 million. It was at 12 million for a while, but it was steady going up for like 5-6 years. It was just going up until it hit that 12 million mark. And people got it to that point. Now, the problem with releasing an MMO after an MMO has already set that standard of 10 million players It's now it has become everybody's standard for an MMO, unfortunately. And once it became everybody's standard for an MMO, then there was no chance. Every other MMO that didn't already have a solid backing was never going to succeed. And that's why I'm worried about some MMOs. 14 has the backing of Final Fantasy fans, which is big. They also did a lot of things right and they did a lot of things wrong, but the game is technically still in its adolescence. It's just a matter of taking of taking it past its adolescence and letting it grow and evolve and seeing where it goes. There's no way a brand new game is going to hold the attention of people who have been playing WoW for years. It just can't happen. It might attract them years down the line. That's when I see MMOs, when they first, new ones that have come out after WoW, they don't stand a chance until they make a major change that makes people want to play it. What people don't understand is WoW is an anomaly. It's an anomaly. Something like that will never, I doubt we'll ever see an MMO that sees the success of World of Warcraft ever again. As long as World of Warcraft stays in existence and Blizzard doesn't change it into something else, like transfer all of their subs there, like shut down WoW and make another MMO, there's no way anything is ever going to top WoW. But people seem to think that these new MMOs coming out, they're WoW killers and they're gonna take a bunch of subscribers from World of Warcraft. That's never going to happen because these games are being developed in the model that World of Warcraft set forward for them. Now, you have some games that try to do things differently because they know, a lot of companies know that if they don't innovate, because they see how World of Warcraft innovated, the industry, on top of coming out at a time where online gaming was really reaching its popularity point, they also innovated. They took everything that was right, they stuck it together, and they made it accessible. But they also made it for the hardcore gamers who were adjusting from that age to the new age, from the days of Final Fantasy XI where you could sit at a boss for 3 hours and not kill it, to the days of Molten Core where you could go through it when it first came out and you would spend your entire week in there. You would have to spend hours even farming to go attempt it. It appealed to both the hardcore and the casual accessible, and that's why it had 5 million right from the year that it came out. They did everything right when the game came out. Any game that tries to do anything differently than that, people don't like change. People are very hard. People want change, but they're afraid of it at the same time. It's just not gonna like, look at Final Fantasy XIV. They tried to be so different from World of Warcraft while still being the same, and it dropped on their faces. Now, don't get me wrong, they made tons of terrible decisions, from server structure to the system that the game was on being too clunky, too many menus. They had tons of mistakes in there, but they were doing everything that they were trying to be so different. You just can't try to be that different. You got to innovate and make something that makes your game appeal over the other game. But if you try to innovate too much, it just bogs people down. 14 1.0 is a perfect example of that. Also, welcome back, Roar. I'm just doing a little rant right now. There's just so many things on my mind about this. And WildStar 2 is trying to be innovative, and I really like what WildStar is doing, and I wish them the best of success. As much as I won't make it my main MMO, I wish them the best of success. Same with ESO. I wish them the best of success. EQ Next, I wish them the best of success because they're trying to innovate the MMO formula. And you've already seen people are saying they think ESO is not a good game. You're seeing people say EQ Next is going to have these kind of problems, and people are just criticizing the innovations and saying, why don't you do it more like World of Warcraft? And that's the thing. People want different, but they want the same. And it's just causing so many problems. Yeah, Age of Conan is another game. The thing is, people just don't want to carry games out of their adolescence. If people were to stay and support the game, they enjoy it. They enjoy it and they stay with it, and they carry it through its adolescence. The game will eventually evolve and it will gain popularity. But what happens is people go play that new MMO that just came out, whatever it might be. They go, this is basically X. This is basically World of Warcraft with X, or World of Warcraft with Y, or World of Warcraft with Z. And then they go, well, if I'm going to play this, I might as well just go back to World of Warcraft. I've seen that sentence so many times. And that's what people have, that character with World of Warcraft that they played for 2 years that they just left, and now they don't want to leave that time investment. There is just so many things in play that World of Warcraft did to get successful and become the anomaly that it is today. They did everything right from a marketing perspective, from a design perspective, from a campaign. Like, they just did everything from a content perspective, for catering to the casual and the hardcore in their own sort of varying ways. They just did everything right. And now people think every MMO has to either be like World of Warcraft, or it has to use just enough of its things and make it over. People who don't want to play WoW now most of the days, they play either another MMO that's completely different, like Final Fantasy 11, or people who still play, Diablo 2, or they just leave the MMO genre altogether. But unfortunately, it just leaves so little room for other MMOs to be successful. That's why I'm glad Final Fantasy 14 wasn't looking to be a monolith like World of Warcraft. Like, the Rift ads that came out were ridiculous. They were like, leave Azeroth behind, come play like a real game. You don't make ads like that. You don't make ads that directly try to undermine the game that inspired your design. You don't do that. Because then, first of all, some people won't even try it because you're trying too hard to get people into your game at that point. You are targeting one specific audience and saying, you play WoW, don't play WoW, play my game. That's pretty much all you're doing. That's not marketing, that's annoying. That's like a little kid bugging you, asking you for something, like over and over again, hey, come do this, and you don't have time, you're doing something else, you're like, hey, daddy's trying to do this. He's like, no, stop. Like, it gets annoying after a while, and then on top of that, it's the same game. Sure, it's got a different, it's got a different what is it? It's got a different talent system, but it's the same idea. It's a talent system that gives you all your abilities and enhances your current abilities. There's nothing. Sure, you can make these crazy different builds with these 3 different souls or whatever it is, but the bottom line is there's still a standard spec that you're going to go for. It's not that different of a system than World of Warcraft already has. And on top of that, the Rifts were for one of the most notable sort of open world events, like Fates are now for 14, or like the active time events were in Guild Wars 2. And they sort of felt tacked on to the game when I played it. It's like, wow, these rifts are so cool. And then after a while, you're getting these rewards from these rifts. You don't even know what they do, and then you end up outscaling their usefulness too much, and then the rifts end up just being tacked on, and you just kind of wish you could go through and not be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not be distracted with all the rifts. But then you're trying to do a quest, and there's a rift in the area, and you can't do it. Now, that's the one thing I don't like about Fates either, is that they sometimes distract you from the game that you're trying to enjoy. Sometimes they're really cool, and sometimes they're nice. But because of the repetitive nature of them, they never really uphold that sort of epic feel that you'd expect from a giant open world battle. Just because they're repetitive, it loses its sort of valor. And yeah, Rift was pretty much the closest thing to an actual WoW clone that most MMOs are accused of. But that's why it wasn't free to play for so long. I mean, Star Wars tried to do its own thing. Final Fantasy 14 1.0 tried to do its own thing, and that was horrible. But the problem is people just expect these games to immediately have 5 million subs, 6 million subs, 7 million subs. These games, never going to happen. There's never going to be a brand new MMO that comes out that 5 million people are going to go play it. It just, World of Warcraft just did everything right. And that's why when I say I don't personally play WoW, and I might rag on WoW a little bit, but it's not a bad game. To say it's a bad game is to say almost all MMOs are bad games. To say you don't like the art style, sure, that could definitely play into it. People who say they don't like the art style, people who say they're not really into the lore, people saying they run into too many douchebags. Any popular MMO you want to play is pretty much going to have certain things. It's going to have its own art style, it's going to have its own lore, it's going to have its own people that play it. And there's so many people who play MMOs, you're never going to find a community that's perfect, that's tight-knit, or there's nobody out there who pisses you off. World of StarCraft. Oh, man. And another big thing, and Yoshi P even said this, he's like, a lot of other games that go from pay-to-play to free-to-play, they had investors, and the investors needed money And because the investors needed money when the games weren't reaching these massive millions upon millions of subs that they were expecting to get, they have to go free to play, open up a cash shop that they regularly update items for, revamp the game so it can be focused around the cash shop. And, well, of course it is. But, it has to change the game to be focused around the cash shop. You can't just introduce a cash shop and be like, unless of course you're World of Warcraft who says, yeah, here's a mount. That's it. Just like here's a mount or here's things like that. There's just so many things in play. So many things in play. And yeah, 14's full of douchebags now. There's no getting around that. I mean, at some point, people are going to fend for themselves. Like, if there's enough douchebags in one place, the nice people will just be douchebags out of self-defense. And it happens at some point. You're like, oh, well, you're going to fucking do that? Well, I'll fucking do that. Do you like it? No, I didn't think so. And sure, you could say that's immature and that's sort of, it doesn't really help the problem. But there's not like a school police officer saying, hey, don't bully him. There's not really any of that, and it's just the sooner people understand that there will be no game that will just immediately take all of WoW's success, the better off the MMO community will be as a whole. It's just never going to happen. 14, no one expected 14 to even reach 1 million, and they didn't. They're at what, 600,000 right now? 600,000 subs. They consider that a shining success, so much so that the company changed their financial report for first quarter of next year from like losing however like 60 million yen to like being up 13 million yen or something like that. That's how much Final Fantasy 14 changed their company, with 1.5 million sales. And keep in mind, that's 1.5 million sales. That's probably including 1.0's numbers, which we are not actually counting. And then on top of that, 600,000 subscribers. 600,000 subscribers, and their reports change that much. In their eyes, the game is a complete success. In the MMO community's eyes, that is a complete failure. And that just goes to show you how much World of Warcraft has tainted the MMO community. It has literally ruined every other game's chance at being as successful as World of Warcraft. I would love to see a game that comes out that just does things so differently, but at the same time so perfectly, and just completely become a monolith of its own. I would love to see that, not because I want to see WoW fail, but because I want to see another game do it. That's more anything else. I just want to see another game hit that kind of success and just analyze what they had to do to get that success. I think that in itself is almost like an underdog story, and that's why I want to see it. Because at some point, something's got to happen. Something's got to cave. The MMO community is either shrinking or it's spreading farther apart. That's pretty much all new MMOs do. They spread the people who play MMOs farther apart, in which case no game will ever be successful. World of Warcraft will stay sort of as the center point with all these other games with random MMO players in them. Some of them are dedicated to the Star Wars universe. Some of them are dedicated to the Final Fantasy universe. Some of them are dedicated to Rift. Some of them are dedicated to this. Some of them are dedicated to that. Everybody's just different, and it's all about the game, how the game connects with the player. Monoliths do kill innovation, such as World of Warcraft, but I would just want to see, even if it didn't come out, I would just want to see a game that somehow did it. That somehow said, okay, World of Warcraft, you did all that. That's great. You changed the industry for everybody else. I want to see another company come out and do that. I want to see another company that just looks at World of Warcraft and says, you guys are great, you guys are amazing, you guys are inspiration. We are going to do this, and we're just going to see how we do. And then whatever they put in place, just want to see how it works and how they somehow reach that same success level. And that's pretty much it. Like, that's just what I want to see. I just want to see somehow a game come up and say, we are going to compete. Realistically, compete. Play Secret World, nothing like WoW. And you know what? I really liked the idea of Secret World. And then what happened? People didn't like how customizable it was. They didn't like how difficult it was. They just couldn't get a niche. it was a really niche idea, but they couldn't reach out to enough people who were interested in that niche idea, on top of trying to obtain casual players who don't like large amounts of customization. They weren't really reaching out to hardcore players because of the lack of a leveling system, and, well, a traditional leveling system, I would say. On top of that, not, you know, the whole limitless leveling thing. It just can't be beaten. World of Warcraft cannot be taken off its pedestal, and the only reason I would want to see a game take it off its pedestal is just to see how they did it, just to see the thought process and the ideas that they came up with that were actually innovative to the MMO community. None of that is pretty much happened since 2005 when World of Warcraft came out. There has not been that same kind of innovation, and it's because of how successful World of Warcraft was. That's all I'm saying. And I know that rant was like 20 minutes. Maybe I'll just upload this rant to YouTube. That would probably be easy, right? It's so interesting to me to see the gaming industry and how it's changed. You know, yeah, Guild Wars 2, another great example. Guild Wars 2 tried no gear progression. You hit max level. There was somewhat of a gear progression. You could get the legendary items, but they weren't really that great. They went for aesthetics because they saw you see League of Legends and you see how well aesthetics sells. And Guild Wars 2, they still consider it a success as far as I know, but they went with horizontal, with people always looking different. You know, aesthetics being a really important thing in MMOs. One of the most common complaints is in MMOs, I don't want to look like everybody else when I hit max level. And Guild Wars 2 attempted to change that. Yeah, I played Guild Wars 2 for a few months as well. But it couldn't hold people because people didn't feel like they were actually reaching towards an important goal. Oh, they changed their mind with Ascended gear? Well, now I know that. Yeah, it's in a very good place. Okay. Good to see that they actually made the Ascended gear, because that was the big problem. People didn't feel like they were really reaching for any goal. They were just playing the game. They were maybe working towards their legendary, but if they didn't want to put that much work into it, then they wouldn't do it. They might PvP, but world versus world was very imbalanced when it first came out because of the way that the worlds were matched up against each other and the time zones that people were matched up against each other. And I just remember that. But they innovated, and they did a pretty decent job at it. And I'm glad to know that Guild Wars 2 is actually still doing relatively well, because I want other successful MMOs on the market. I want to be able to go into a conversation with somebody and be like, and talk about my favorite MMO, and they talk about their favorite MMO, and we're not just looking for things that are wrong with each other's MMOs, because that's what people do nowadays. If you have a friend who plays a different MMO than you, and you tell them about something you just did in your MMO, most of the time they will either be A, uninterested because it doesn't involve their MMO, or B, they'll be like, why the hell would they do that? That's so stupid. Because they want their MMO to be the MMO that everybody loves. And it happens with World of Warcraft players, it happened with Rift players, with Guild Wars 2 players, with Guild Wars 1 players. Final Fantasy 11 players are a huge example. Final Fantasy 14 players, etc., 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 etc. Guild Wars 2 also tried to show that you didn't need the Trinity. A lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people were trying to make dedicated tanks, dedicated healers, dedicated DPS. People weren't so up for the whole no Trinity thing. Whew. And as good as it was for a few months, I couldn't enjoy it for much anything longer than that. It's so many things that I feel like we're on the verge of an MMO innovation. Something's going to happen soon. Something that's going to be crazy. Do I think 14 could run for as long? Yeah. 400 to 600,000 subscribers for 10 years. I think they'd be happy with that. And I think in a year or so, people will look at Final Fantasy 14 and consider it an MMO to switch to. Only because of the hard work that's being put into it and the money that's being put into it. It's just so different, man. The MMO, because when I started playing MMOs, I started with Final Fantasy 11, 2002 or 2003. And I would have never imagined MMOs coming as far as they have. But they did. They somehow found a way to evolve into what they are today. Unfortunately, though, it's the one gaming community that I think just has no real synergy with each other. MMO developers respect each other, and that's the end of it. The players, they meet people that they like. You know, people who may have felt introverted their whole life can use MMOs to reach out and meet people that they wouldn't otherwise have known because they like to stay in and play video games and things like that. And then you have the extroverted people who do play them, who go out and they make those friends as well. But the problem is, it's just like a bunch of little cliques. That's what it comes down to. It's just a bunch of little cliques that all clash with each other and talk shit about each other. And that's all it comes down to. You very rarely just go out and meet somebody who is just cool. It's very, very rare. As for Guild Wars 2 2-week content updates, I don't really know much about it, so I won't really speak on it. But I don't know. I feel like if you're putting enough work into it, that's fine. I don't know how much work they're putting into it, though. Do I think 14 is worth it? My opinion is yes. Other people's opinions might definitely be no. And that's, people almost look for a reason not to get into a different MMO. People don't look like, oh, they don't look at something and they go, wow, that's really cool. They look and they browse through a forum and they see, please fix this, or endgame is broken, or how to fix this. And they go, well, I don't want to play this game anymore. And every MMO has those forum posts. World of Warcraft has the most of them. But they also have the most subscribers, so it doesn't really matter with them. Whew. Okay. If anything, $40, $50, definitely worth at least playing through the story. I will agree with that. But man, there is just so much thought, so many thoughts on my mind when it comes to MMOs, and so much I want to learn about them. So how much I want to see the inside of the workings of an MMO, and you know how decisions are made about certain content updates, and meet content developers, because I always have ideas about content that I would love to release, but I'm one person and I don't have the technical skills to do things like that. I'm more of a storyboarder, and it's, oh man, it's just crazy. Just, yeah, the game's own community usually kills the game. And unfortunately, it's because of the attitude. People from World of Warcraft come with that attitude to other MMOs and ruin it for other people. Oh man, I could talk about this for hours, guys. I was gonna leave 45 minutes ago, and then I started talking. And I just can't stop ranting about it, man. And it all stemmed from one comment from... I want to thank that guy now. Yeah, 14 is another thing. A lot of MMOs don't market as strong. Rift marketed the hell out of its game, and it ended up costing them a lot in the end. Woo! Oh, man.